The Titanic was heading southwest towards the Gulf Stream. In any normal year, this would be too far south to encounter an iceberg. But 1912 was not a normal year. At midday on Sunday, April the 14th, Phillips received the second ice warning of the day. It was from the steamship Baltic and gave the location of a region of ice that contained icebergs, an area the Titanic was heading towards. The MSG prefix would show it was for the captain's attention. There would be 5 ice warnings during the day, but this would be the last that the captain would receive. At 2 o'clock in the afternoon, the captain handed the message to Ismay.
Anyone would think we're heading towards the North Pole.
2 weeks after the disaster, the inquiry would attempt to prove that Ismay had wanted the captain to keep to schedule and ignore any ice warnings.
Why do you think the captain handed you the Marconigram?
As a matter of information, I take it.
You knew, of course, that the proximity of icebergs was a danger. You knew that much, did you not?
There is always a danger with ice.
And you knew that you would be in the region of ice sometime on that Sunday night?
Yes.
And therefore it behoved those who were responsible for the navigation of the ship to be very careful.
Naturally.
Would it not be necessary to slow down for icebergs?
Presumably so, yes.
Then what is the object of continuing at full speed through the night if you expect to meet ice? Why do you do it?
I presume that the captain would be anxious to get through the ice region. He would not want to slow down upon the chance of a fog coming on.
So the object of it is to get through it as fast as you could?
I presume that if a man on a perfectly clear night could see far enough to clear an iceberg, then he would be perfectly justified in getting through the ice region as quickly as possible.
Despite the lack of evidence, many American newspapers still believed that Ismay had asked Captain Smith to go faster.
Captain Smith was Commodore of the White Star Line. He had been appointed to that position by Bruce Ismay's father. Even somebody like Bruce Ismay would be deferential to the word of Captain Smith. Captain is everything on board a ship. He is God on board. His word is the word of God.
The Titanic was heading in a direction away from the iceberg, but it was about to change course. Captain Smith had planned a change in course from southwest to due west at 5:30 p.m. But he delayed the change in direction by 20 minutes to allow the ship to travel further south and avoid the ice region reported in the Baltic's wireless message.
South 86 West, Mr. Hitchens. Steady as she goes.
The captain believed he was heading to a safe area of the Gulf Stream, where there were no icebergs. But in 1912, a phenomenon took place that allowed icebergs to travel further south than was thought possible. The cold Labrador Current had pushed itself into the Gulf Stream, forming a cold protective layer around the iceberg.
The Labrador Current goes where the Gulf Stream permits it to go. Depending upon the exact location of the Gulf Stream, the cold water can move quite far to the south of the tail of the bank. If the Gulf Stream is southward moving, you have relatively cold water pushing very far south into the North Atlantic Ocean, into the shipping lanes. In recent years, icebergs have moved as far south as the latitude of Philadelphia.
The iceberg was 10 times the mass of the Titanic and 130 miles away. It had now been seen by the steamship Californian, which had sent a warning message to the Titanic. While Phillips rested in the cabin next to the wireless room, his assistant Bride was manning the wireless. Although Bride heard the message from the Californian, he did not respond.
Although you knew that you were called, you had something else to do?
Yes.
What business was it that you were attending to at the time?
I was writing up the accounts.
Although Phillips and Bride were well-trained wireless operators, they were poorly paid and had to rely on sending passenger messages to earn their wages. At 7:20 p.m., Bride finished his accounts and then intercepted the message from the Californian. It warned of 3 large icebergs seen at latitude 42 degrees north, longitude 49 degrees west.
It's for the captain going to the bridge.
But Captain Smith had already left the bridge and was now dining with passengers. Had Bride taken down the message earlier, the captain would have received it and could have taken evasive action.
And you simply delivered it to an officer on the bridge?
It's for the captain. Yes.
Which officer?
I can't remember.
None of the surviving officers recall ever seeing this vital message. To this day, nobody knows if the message was delivered. At 7:30, the Titanic steamed ahead at 24 miles per hour. It would reach the iceberg in just over 4 hours. Even the sea conditions would play a hand in the ship's fate. At 8:55, Captain Smith checked the bridge before retiring for the night.
It's cold. Yes, it is cold, sir. Not much wind either.
No, sir. As a matter of fact, it's a flat calm.
Yes, a flat calm.
You both realized at the time that since it was a flat calm, it would be more difficult to see the ice.
As far as the case of the berg is concerned, yes, it would be much more difficult. Naturally, you wouldn't see the water breaking on it if there were no wind, so you would not have that to look for. There should be a certain amount of reflected light from the iceberg, sir.
Yes, providing it remains clear. If it becomes at all doubtful, let me know at once.
Yes, sir. Good night, sir.
Good night, Mr. Lightwater.
Then you had both made up your minds at this time that you were about to encounter icebergs.
No, not necessarily. We knew we were in the vicinity of ice. And although you cross the Atlantic for years and have ice reported and never see it, at other times it's not reported and you do see it.
Had there been any discussion between you at all as to speed?
None?
You were going full speed ahead at this time.
Yes.
About 21.5 knots, you think?
Yes.
And you were not taking any measures to reduce the speed?
None, my lord.
So you were relying for safety entirely on the lookout man?
Yes.
At 9:45 p.m. The iceberg was 50 miles away. There hadn't been any waves to erode it, and because it was surrounded by cold water, very little had melted away. In the wireless room, Phillips had a 2-hour window to send every passenger message while the Titanic was in range of the Cape Race receiver at Newfoundland. But his work was interrupted by the 5th and the most critical ice warning of the day. It was from another ship, the SS Mesaba. It gave the precise location of an area containing icebergs that was now only 50 miles away from the Titanic. The information would alert the captain that the Titanic was heading straight towards the iceberg. But the warning came without an MSG prefix, so Phillips interpreted the message as non-urgent and went back to sending passenger messages. The unseen message from Masaba was one more link in the chain of unfortunate events. Not only was the sea flat calm, but it was also a moonless night. A rare combination of conditions that made it difficult to see icebergs in the distance. As was the case for all passenger ships of the day, there was no official procedure for slowing down for ice. Traveling at almost full speed, the Titanic would reach the iceberg in 2 hours. But unaware of its existence, the officer's main concern was small, low-lying icebergs called growlers.
All icebergs are dangerous, but actually a small iceberg or a growler, which might only be the size of a small car, can be very dangerous. Granted, the risk of a ship colliding with it is probably lower, but the possibility that a ship would not see it is higher.
Keep a sharp lookout for ice, particularly small ice and growlers. And pass that word on till daylight.
Sir.
What is a growler?
Well, a growler really is the worst form of ice. It's a larger berg that is melted down, or should I say, a solid body of ice that is lower in the water and much more difficult to see than field ice or icebergs.
What was the ship's speed?
21 knots.
21 knots is about 700 yards a minute. Is your view that you could see a growler at a safe distance at night time going at that pace?
I judged that I could see a growler at 1.5 miles. Or more, probably 2 miles.
At 10 o'clock, Fleet and Lee started their watch. The lookouts would keep a watch for growlers, unaware that the danger ahead was from a large iceberg, 100 feet high, the same height as the crow's nest.
In view of this accident,